Hello and welcome to Life.EV, your weekly dive into the essence of life's value explorations right at the heart of the India's economic boom. I'm your host, Ajit Panicker, sharing roles at Nova HVAC and Pure Blue Tech, where the entrepreneurial journey is a lived reality. Every Saturday at 11 a.m., we bring you a 20-minute conversation that go beyond business growth, delving into the ethos of value creation. Let's embark on this quest together, redefining the success in business and life. Welcome to Life.EV, Life Exploring Values. And happy to introduce you Vivek Asrani as usual. Hello, Vivek, how are you doing?
Very well, Ajit. Thanks for having me on the show again. How are you doing?
Absolutely good. To our viewers, Vivek runs Kemo, which is a leading leader in industrial fasteners. He's also known for his value exploration. Vivek has shared weekly insights on vivekasrani.com for 4 years, enriching our discussions today is with his profound reflections. Vivek also brings insights from his book, One Day at a Time, available on Amazon, which explores values in depth. Dive into this conversation with us on life.ev for a deeper understanding. And today's episode tackles with learning to listen, a theme that might seem familiar, but holds untold depths. Vivek, it seems such a very simple topic, learning to listen. Tell us about this here.
So honestly, Ajit, I think I have realized a lot of aspects of listening the hard way in life. Uh, there are six aspects of listening which I had written in my reflection, and I'm just going to share some of those with you. So first is very often we listen to people who in our minds we have already categorized as worth listening to and not worth listening to. So very often it's the person behind the words that we give weightage to. And the risk therefore we run is that something very powerful or meaningful or impactful that is being said by somebody who we don't hold in high esteem, we may just brush off that, okay, this person really is not worth listening to. And I think so we got to be careful that there is, a connect between listening and some of the judgments that we've already made in our mind. Second is when we are faced with opposition. Very often, beyond a point, we just stop listening, and we don't have the stamina or the bandwidth to really understand what the other person is trying to say. So opposition just kind of blocks, the communication, and then we're not listening anymore. The third aspect is that there are people who have a need to be heard, and we again are very quick to dismiss somebody's need by saying that, okay, I don't need to listen to this, and it's not part of my agenda. So listening is not only about what we want to hear, but also realizing and recognizing somebody else's need to be heard. uh, the fourth, and I think this is something which is a challenge, has been a challenge for me personally as well. Very often we listen to the words and we respond to the words, but we don't very often hear the feeling behind the words. And not everyone is as comfortable or articulate in expressing their feelings uh, as clearly as some other people might be. And therefore, just listening to the words without hearing the feeling behind it can, often lead us in a difficult situation. Also, Ajit, very often, and as I would say most often, we are listening with judgment. So when the other person starts speaking, we're already building this picture in our mind. Who is this person? What's the background? Where does he or she come from? So we already have these filters. So what's coming to us is not really the unfiltered message or information or communication, is getting filtered through our own prejudices and judgments. So learning to listen without any of the filters is a tough one, but absolutely necessary. And the last thing I would say is we listen, or at least on the face of it, we give the impression that we're listening, but actually while someone is talking, we're you know already thinking of the response. So while someone is talking, we're reloading our gun to say, okay, once he or she finishes, I'm going to fire. And in that, we've really stopped listening deeply and we're just preparing our responses. So this has been my understanding of the art of learning to listen.
Vivek, I find this you talking about it, one of the thoughts that comes across my mind, and it's a little political, but I really want to bring this out. We have our own political preferences,
Hmm.
and in current political scenario, if you ever want to have a discussion, all right, it's so difficult because you never have a discussion. The other person doesn't want to listen to what it is, and it's always a debate. Now, what's the point? If you, I mean, it's okay not to agree to what you say, but they come with so much of expectation that, when you say something, this is what I want to hear. And you can never have a healthy political discussion. Uh, what are your thoughts on this here?
But Ajit, why only political? I think this also branches out into other aspects of life. But it's very interesting that you use two words, discussion and debate. So I'm just going to read out a paragraph or from my reflection on precisely what you actually just mentioned. That discussions are not debates to be won. If we walk away with even one new fact or perspective, we've grown. And every conversation allows us that. But very often we stop listening and we're thinking of a quick response, even as the other is seeking to score a point. To listen is to develop. And I think the whole thing is that how are we developing the art of really granting the other person that he or she may have something to say which could be meaningful and impactful for me, even though I may otherwise disagree with that person. And this really brings me to another point, which is when listening, the rule has to be what is right, not who is right. And to your point on the political debates, it's all about who is saying it rather than what is being said. So that is, one aspect. And the second is we need a lot of humility to say that even though I may differ from you politically or in any other sphere, I still accept that you may have something to say of value to me. And that humility makes us a good listener as well. So I think at some level in the political arena, maybe we've lost that humility and we've lost that principle as to uh, what is right, and we just anchor and they've anchored themselves to uh, who is right. But Ajit, this actually also hinges on something else, which is in spite of knowing a lot of this, we make mistakes, right? And very often we look back and we say to ourselves, I wish I'd listened a little better. I don't know, has it ever happened with you?
Yeah, but I must tell you, first is a confession. I'm a damn good listener. I'm a very good listener, and this happened in the last 20 years. I've been married for 23 years, and I've made social bias, made sure that I'm a very good listener. So to all you married folks, it's there. You already know you're good listeners. Okay, you've been trained and domesticated on that one. But jokes apart, but I'll tell you something. You know, that's an experience that I wanted to actually share. So when we launched this whole new technology platform for the industry, we were very clear. We were just aggregating, and we just needed about 100 odd people who would use our platform. So I said, uh, you got to pay to use the platform. And it's highly an unorganized industry, and the air conditioning industry is extremely unorganized. And my team used to come back and saying, sir, they don't want to pay for it. They find it very expensive. I said, this is expensive, then we don't need them as our customers. And they kept saying that, listen, they want something cheap or they wanted something. What they were trying to tell me is, give me something to try out. And we said, no way. We want to. And I always thought it as my sales guys coming with that as an excuse. It was something, just not listening, just hearing them out and always with a judgment. It went on for a year or two, and we were just we just kept moving along. Then I finally said, hey, listen, let's get to the deep root. And they said, sir, can we have something like a free version? And that's exactly what happened. We just said, okay, let's try a free version. And it was a huge shift from our strategy. And that's it. We didn't look back after that. The adoption was much faster than what we really were expecting through the paid version. And that's a big thing. And then you realize, at times, that you're so much into your own expectations, your own judgments, and everything, that you fail to pick up these early traits, which is your frontline people coming back and telling you. And there's always a price to be paid, both in time and money. What's it been with like you? I mean, have you had similar situations like these?
Yeah, two distinct situations come to mind. So one was with a customer. Uh, so just before I met him, and funnily, I was driving to the airport, and I got a phone call from our office saying that, hey, you might be meeting this customer, because we were all there at an exhibition together, and there were some payments which were pending. We were trying to get through to him. Can you just kind of ask him about that? So it was fresh in my mind, and I reached the airport, and he was standing over there, and there was somebody with him. And this was a classic case again of me being just so full of my own agenda that he met me and greeted me very warmly as I did, and we were chatting, and he started telling me about how his business has grown, and he was telling me that, listen, I hope that my your business is also growing because of us. He said it in a bit of a jest, which was a fact. Actually, he was a big customer for us, and I wasn't listening to that, right? Because I was waiting to talk to him about the payment issue. Not that it was a big issue, but it was just something which was I had to talk to him about. So even while he's telling me that he's growing and we are growing because of him, he finishes that, and I'm like, hey, by the way, I believe there are some payments that are overdue. And I didn't realize, not that I didn't see it, but I didn't realize at that point of time that there was somebody standing with him. And immediately I could see a shift in his body language, because in front of a friend of his, I'd asked him about, which was a cardinal mistake. I mean, I would never ever do it yet, but I did it. We lost that customer. We still don't have him back. But that for me was one of the biggest lessons in learning to listen deeply and also gauge the mood of the person and where that person is coming from. So that was one big mistake which I made, which, like I told you, I've learned a lot of this the hard way. The other, more on the personal front. So, Rashid and I are very different people at one level. We are very similar in terms of our values and principles. And very often, over the years, she would tell me, you're not understanding what I'm trying to say. And me coming from my rational, logical, I'm saying, but you said this, so I'm responding to exactly what you're saying. So I was listening to the words, but I don't think I was listening to the feeling and the messaging behind the words. And that's the other thing I've learned, that in relationships, whether it be in business or in the personal life, our willingness and ability to take a step back and say, what is it that I'm not hearing? So the ability to hear what is not being said is also good listening. And that, I think, has been one of the big realizations for me over the years. But I also want to share something positive in terms of just the power of listening. We were doing a transaction. The seller refused to meet me and refused to acknowledge my letters to him, didn't call me back. So I kind of, left it. I said, he doesn't want to sell his property to us, doesn't want to acknowledge me. That's fine. Just let go of it. I'm standing at a petrol pump, Ajit, and I get this very strong thought, call up this man now. And I picked up the phone and I gave him a call. One thing led to another, and long story short, we closed the transaction within 3 days, because then, I said, listen, in typical business style, I said, Somani sahab, aapki meri itni baat hui hai, ek cup chai pilaoge ki nahi? So he started laughing. He said, you seem like a good person. Come over. Now, what did I do in that entire transaction, right? I listened to a call that came from within. It wasn't a strategy. I wasn't trying to find connections. I wasn't overthinking, okay, what's the right approach? What should I do? Should I just land up? Should I send another letter? Should I find who's a common connection? None of that. I just listened to my inner voice, which led to the success of, at that time, the largest transaction. And I just want to read out, how I had concluded my reflection on this, Ajit, on learning to listen. That we must develop the art of listening deeply and honestly, starting with listening to our inner voice. And for me, that really has been the essence of learning to listen.
Amazing. Yeah. For someone who says that, learning to listen is something that we all take for granted, but there's so much of depth in that whole thing. And it's, we all take it for granted, but we also realize that it's something that we need to train ourselves in. And it's something that we constantly need to be focused on, whether it's in a group behavior or even just to yourself, or even just on a one-on-one basis. It's something, and that from my experience, I've learned that I'm still getting it, not got it right, and I still have to actually keep practicing and remembering and reminding. And often I'll tell you, Vivek, often the complexity comes in when you've got too many thoughts in your mind, when you're stressed out about something, when you're actually worked, and then you tend to miss out on all those conversations, or you sometimes don't pay attention, and then you pay the price for it. And when you are in a sane mind, you regret it. Why did I even do that?
No, but just Ajit, I'll tell you, when I find myself not listening, and at the end of the day, when I just check in with how the day went, I have realized that when I'm not listening, if I'm impatient, it's a sign of my ego, that the other person is not worth spending time with, and I just don't have the time to listen to this.
True.
If I am not listening, it could be a sign of arrogance, to say that, this person doesn't come from the same level of knowledge as I think I come from, or doesn't know as much as I do. So I'm not granting the other person the same authority. So it could be a sign of arrogance. Okay. Sometimes when I'm not listening, it could be my own prejudices and preconceived notions, because of which I've just stopped listening to what the other person is saying. So I think when we don't listen, it's also an indication for us to start listening to ourselves, to say that what is it in me that is blocking me from listening well. And I think it could change us as a person and not just make us better listeners.
True. And for most of us who are parents, it's a big reflection when you're actually dealing with your children. Learning to listen is extremely important out there, and I've just realized most of it comes from that too. That having that patience to listen to your children and understand where they're coming from, and not from our, what we want as parents. I think it's a great, very simple topic, but there's so much of depth in it. So thank you, Vivek. I think that's the time that we have today, and it's very thought provoking, with some very deep insights, and it's got enough content for each of us to think about it. So to all our listeners, we would encourage you to not keep these ideas to yourself. Share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and families, and just ask them, "What do you think?" Spark a conversation and see where it leads. Now, that wraps up a stimulating discussion full of insights on balancing values with business growth. We are eager to hear from you on your thoughts. Engage with us on social media. Share your questions and what you've learned. Your input is crucial in fostering an ethically driven business community. That's all for us today from Life.EV. For more on exploring values, join us next week again on Saturday at 11 a.m. Vivek, thank you very much for those insights. And to all our friends, thank you for listening, and keep the conversation on values going with your friends. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye. Take care.
Bye bye. See you.